Chapter 25. Sejanus startled in what Coriolanus couldn't help thinking was a guilty manner, getting rapidly to his feet as he brushed the dust from his uniform. Billy Top, on the other hand, rose slowly, almost lazily, to confront him. "Well, look who's starting to talk to me," he said, grinning uneasily at Lucy Gray. Was this the first time they'd spoken since the Hunger Games? "Sejanus, Maud Ivory is all bent out of shape about you bailing on those nuts," she said. "Yes, I've been shirking my duty," Sejanus held out his hand to Billy Top, who didn't hesitate to give it a shake. "Nice meeting you." "Sure, you too. You can find me around the house some days if you want to talk more," Billy Top replied. "I'll keep it in mind," said Sejanus, making for the house. Lucy Gray released Coriolanus' hand and squared his shoulders with Billy Top's. "Go away, Billy Top, and don't come back." "Or what, Lucy Gray? You'll sick your peacekeepers on me?" he laughed. "If need be," she said. Billy Top glanced over at Coriolanus. It seemed like a pretty tame pair. "You don't get it. There's no walking back," said Lucy Gray. Billy Top turned angry. "You know I didn't try and kill you." "I know you're still running with that girl that did," Lucy Gray shot back. "Here you made yourself right at home at the mayor's. Who sent me over there in the first place, I wonder? Makes me sick how you're playing the kids. Poor Lucy Gray, poor Lan," he sneered. "You're not stupid. They want you gone, too," she spat out. Billy Top's hand whipped out, grabbing her wrist and pulling her up against him. "Where exactly am I supposed to go?" Before Coriolanus could intervene, Lucy Gray sank her teeth into Billy Top's hand, causing him to yelp and release her. He glared at Coriolanus, who stepped up protectively beside her. "Doesn't look like you're so lonely yourself. This young fancy man from the capital chased all this way after you. You got a few surprises waiting for him." "I already know all about you," Coriolanus didn't really, but it made him feel at least less of a disadvantage. Billy Top gave a disbelieving like, "Me? I'm the rosebud in the dung heap." "Why don't you go, like she said Coriolanus coldly. "Fine, you'll learn." Billy Top gathered his possessions in his arms. "You'll learn soon enough." He strode off into the hot morning. Lucy Gray watched him go, rubbing the wrist he'd grabbed. "If you want to run, now's the time." "I don't want to run," said Coriolanus, although the exchange had been unsettling. "He's a liar and a louse. Sure, I flirt with anybody. It's part of my job, but he's implying that just isn't true." Lucy Gray looked over at the window. What if it was? What if it was that or letting Maud Ivory starve? Neither of us would have had let that happen, no matter what it took. Only he's got different set of rules for him than for me. Like always, what makes him a victim makes me trash. This brought back disturbing memories of his conversation with Tigris, and Coriolanus changed the subject quickly. "He's seeing the mayor's daughters now?" "That's how it is. I sent him over to pick up some cash teaching piano lessons, and the next thing I know, her daddy's calling out my name in the reaping," said Lucy Gray. Not sure what she told him. He'd go nuts if he knew she was running around with Billy Top. "Well, I survived the capital, but not to come back for more of the same." Something in her manner, the raw distress, convinced Coriolanus. He touched her arm. "Make a new life, then." She entwined her fingers with his. "A new life with you," but a cloud hung over her. Coriolanus gave her a nudge. "Don't we have a goat to milk?" Her face relaxed. "We do." She let him back in the house, only to find Maud Ivory had taken Sejanus out to teach him to milk Seamus. "He couldn't say no. He's in the doghouse for talking to the enemy," said Barbazor. She took a pan of chilled milk from the old refrigerator, set it on the table, and examined it. From a shelf, Clerk Carmine retrieved a glass jar with some sort of contraption on top. A crank attached to the lid appeared to move paddles within the jar. "What are you doing there?" asked Coriolanus. "A fool's errand," Barbazor laughed. "Trying to get enough cream so as we can make butter. Only goat's milk doesn't separate like cows." "Maybe if we gave it another day," Clerk Carmine said. "Well, maybe." Barbazor returned the pan to the fridge. "We promised Maud Ivory we'd try. She's crazy for butter. Tam Amber fashioned the churn for her birthday. Guess we'll see," said Lucy Gray. Coriolanus fiddled with the crank. Theoretically, when you get enough cream, you can turn the handle and the paddles turn it into the butter," Lucy Gray explained. "Well, that's what somebody told us anyway." "Seems like a lot of work." Coriolanus thought of the beautiful uniform hats he'd helped himself from the buffet on a reaping day, never giving a moment's thought as to where they came from. "It is, but it'll be worth it if it works. Maud Ivory doesn't sleep well since they took me away. Seems fine during the day, then wakes up screaming at night," confided Lucy Gray, trying to get her some happiness in her head. Barbazor strained the fresh milk Sejanus and Maud Ivory brought in and poured it into mugs while Lucy Gray portioned out the bread. Coriolanus had never had goat's milk, but Sejanus smacked his lips, saying it reminded him of his childhood in District 2. "Did I ever go to District 2, Maud Ivory asked. "No, baby, that's out west. The Cubby stayed more east," Barbazor told her. "Sometimes we went north," said Tambourine. Coriolanus realized it was the first time he'd heard him speak. "To what district?" asked Coriolanus. "No district, really," said Barbazor. "Up where the capital didn't care about." Coriolanus felt embarrassed for them. No such place existed, at least not anymore. The capital controls the known world. For a moment he imagined a group of people with wild animal fur scraping out an existence in a cave somewhere. He supposed such a thing could happen, but that life would be a big step down from even the districts, barely human. "Probably rounded up like we were," said Clark Carmine. Barb Ivory gave a sad smile. "Doubt we'll ever know." "Is there any more? I'm still hungry," Maud Ivory complained, but the bread was gone. "Eat a handful of your nuts," Barbazor said. They'll feed us at the wedding." To Coriolanus' dismay, it turned out that Kobe had a job that afternoon playing for a wedding in town. He hoped that Lucy Gray off alone for a more in-depth conversation about Billy Topper's history with him, and exactly what he may be drawing a map of the base in the dirt, but we will all have to wait, since the couple began to prepare for their gig as soon as the dishes were washed. Sorry to run off soon, but this is how we earn our bread. Lucy Gray saw Coriolanus and Sejanus at the door. The butcher's daughter getting hitched, and we need to make a good impression. People with money to hire us will be there. You could wait and walk us over, I guess, but that might be. Start people gossiping, he finished for her, glad she'd been the first to suggest it. Probably best if we keep between us. When can I see you again? Anytime you like, she said. I have a feeling your schedule's a little more demanding than mine. Did you play at the Hob next Saturday? He asked. If they let us. After the trouble last night, they agreed he would come as early as he could to share a few precious minutes with her before the show. There's a shed we use just behind the Hob. You can meet us there. If there's no show, just come to my house. Coriolanus waited until he and Sejanus reached the deserted back streets near the base before he broached the subject to Billy Top. So what did you two have to talk about? Nothing really, said Sejanus uncomfortably, just some local gossip. And that required a map of the base? Asked Coriolanus. Sejanus pulled up short. You never miss a beat, do you? I remember that from school, watching you watch other people, pretending you weren't, and choosing the moments you would in carefully. I'm weighing in now, said Janus. Why were you in a deep condition with him over the map of the base? What is he, a rebel sympathizer? Sejanus averted his gaze, so Coriolanus continued. What possible interest can he have in the capital base? Sejanus stared at the ground for the minute, then he said, It's the girl from the hanging. The one they arrested the other day, Lil. She's locked up there. And the rebels want to rescue her? Pressed Coriolanus. No. They just want to communicate with her, make sure she's okay, explained Sejanus. Coriolanus tried to keep his temper in check. And you said you would help? No, I made no promises, but if I can, I'm near the guardhouse, perhaps I can find something out. Her family's frantic, said Sejanus. Oh, wonderful, fantastic. So now you're a rebel informant. Coriolanus took off down the road. I thought you were letting the whole rebel thing go. Sejanus followed on his heels. I can't, all right? It's part of who I am, and you're the one who said I could help the people in the districts if I agreed to leave the arena. I believe I said you could fight for the tributes, meaning you might be able to procure more humane conditions for them, Coriolanus corrected him. Humane conditions, Sejanus burst out. They're being forced to murder each other, and the tributes are from the districts too, so I don't really see a distinction. It's a tiny thing, Corey, to check up on this girl. Clearly it isn't, said Coriolanus. Not to Billy Tope, anyway. And why did he wipe out that map so fast? Because he knows what he's asking. He knows he's making you a collaborator. And do you know what happens to collaborators? I just thought, began Sejanus. No, Sejanus, you're not thinking at all, Steve Coriolanus. Even worse, you're falling in with people who barely seem capable of thought. Billy Tope, what's his stake in this anyway? Money? Because to hear Lucy Gray talk, the Cubby aren't rebels or capital. They're pretty much set on hanging on to their own identity, whatever that is. I don't know, he said. He was asking for a friend, stammered Sejanus. A friend? Coriolanus realized he was shouting and dropped his voice to a hush. A friend of old Arlo who set the explosions in the mines? There was a piece of brilliant plotting. What possible result could have been he hoping for? They have no resources, nothing at all that would allow them to re-engage in war. In the meantime, they're biting the hand that feeds them, because how will they eat here in 12 without those mines? They're not exactly bubbling over options. What sort of strategy was that? A desperate one. Look around, Sejanus grabbed his arm. How long can you expect them to go on like this? Coriolanus felt a surge of hatred as he remembered the war, the devastations the rebels had brought on his own life. He yanked his arm free. They lost the war they started. They took the risk. This is the price they pay. Sejanus looked about as if unsure which direction to go, then slumped down on a broken wall along the road. Coriolanus had the unpleasant feeling that he was somehow talking out the old Strabo Plinth's role in the endless discussion over where Sejanus' loyalties lay. He had not signed up for this. On the other hand, if Sejanus went rogue, out here there was no telling where it would end. Coriolanus sat down beside him. Look, I think things will improve really, but not like this. As it gets better overall, it will get better here, but not if they keep blowing up mines. All that does is add to the body count. Sejanus nodded, and they sat there. A few raggedy children went by, kicking an old tin can down the road. You think I've committed treason? Not quite yet, said Coriolanus with a half smile. Sejanus tugged at some weeds growing out of the wall. Dr. Gall does. My father went to see her before he went to the Dean Highbottom in the board. Everyone knows she's really the one in charge. He went to ask if I might be given the chance you were to sign up for peacekeepers. I thought that would be automatic, said Coriolanus, if you were expelled like me. That was my father's hope, but she said, don't conflate the boy's actions. A piece of faulty strategy is not commensurate with treasonous act of rebel support. Bitterness crept in his voice, and so a check appeared for a new lab for her months. It must have been the priciest ticket to District 12 in history. Coriolanus gave a low whistle. A gymnasium and a lab? Say what you will, I've done more for the capital reconstruction than the president himself, Sejanus joked half-heartedly. You're right, Coriolanus, I have been stupid. Again, I'll be more careful in the future, whatever that holds. Probably some fried bologna, Coriolanus said. Well, then lead on, said Sejanus, and they resumed their trek to the base. Their bunkmates were rolling out of bed when they returned. Sejanus took Beanpole out of the work on the drills, and Smiling Bug went over to see what happened in the rec room. Coriolanus planned to use the hours until dinner studying for the officer candidate test, but his conversation with Sejanus had planted an idea in his brain. It grew rapidly until it would wipe out everything else. Dr. Gall had defended him. Well, not defended him, but made sure Dribble Plinth understood that Coriolanus was in an entirely different class than his delinquent son. Coriolanus' crime had been only a piece of faulty strategy, which didn't sound like much of a crime at all. Perhaps she hadn't written him off entirely. She seemed to take special pains with his education during the game, signaling him about. Would it be worth writing to her now, just to, well, he didn't know what he hoped to achieve. But who knew up the road when he might be an officer of some consequence if their paths might not cross again? It couldn't hurt to write her. He'd already been stripped of everything of value. The worst she could do was ignore him. Coriolanus chewed on his pen as he tried to compose his thoughts. Should he start with an apology? Why? She would know he wasn't sorry for trying to win, only for being caught. Better to bypass the apology entirely. He could tell her of his life here on the base, but it seemed too mundane. Their conversations had been of nothing else elevated. An ongoing lesson exclusively for his benefit, and then struck him. The thing to do was to continue the lesson where he had left off. His one pager on chaos control, and what was the third one? He always had trouble remembering. Oh yeah, contract. The one it took that make the capital to enforce. And so he began. Dear Dr. Gall, so much has occurred since our last conversation, but every day I'm informed by it. District Gall provides an excellent stage upon which to watch the battle between chaos and control play out. As a peacekeeper, I have a front row seat. He went on to discuss these things he'd been privy to since his arrival. The palpable tension between the citizens and the capital forces, how it threatened to spill over into violence at the hanging, how it overflowed into a brawl at the hop. It reminded me of my stint in the arena. It's one thing to speak of humans' essential nature theoretically, another to consider it when a fist is smashing your mouth. Only this time I felt more prepared. I'm not convinced that we are all inherently violent, as you say, but it takes very little to bring the beast to the surface, at least under the cover of darkness. I wonder how many of the miners would have thrown a punch at the capital had they could have seen their faces. In the midday sun of the hanging, they grumbled, but didn't dare to fight. Well, it's something to think over while my lip heals. He added that he did not expect she would have replied, but he wished her well, 2 pages short and sweet. Not overly demanding attention, not asking for anything, not apologizing. He folded the letter crisply, sealed the envelope, and addressed it to her at the Citadel. To avoid questions, especially from Janus, he went directly and dropped it to the mail. There goes nothing, he thought. At dinner, the fried bologna came with applesauce and greasy chunks of potatoes, and he ate every bite on his heaping tray with relish. After supper, Janus helped him study for the test, being non-committal as his own interest in it. He only offered it 3 times a year, and this one's after Wednesday afternoon, said Coriolanus. You should both take it, if only for practice. Well, I don't have any handle on the military stuff yet. I think you'll get through it, though. Janus replied. Even if you're a little shaky, you'll ace the rest of it. Your overall score might be high enough to pass. Go ahead, take it before you forget all your math. He had a point. Already some of Coriolanus' geometry seemed a bit rusty. You were an officer. Perhaps they let you train to be a doctor. You were awfully good in science, said Coriolanus, trying to fill out where Janus' head might be after that conversation. You definitely needed someone new to focus on, and then you could, like said, help people. That's true, Janus thought over. Maybe I'll talk to the doctor over at the clinic and find out how they got there. The following morning, after a night of strange dreams that vacillated between him kissing Lucy Gray and feeding Dr. Gall snakelets, Coriolanus added his name to the list to take the test. The officer in charge told him that he'd be officially excused from training. That in itself seemed incentive to account for the week promised to be broiling. It was more than that, really. The heat, yes, but also the boredom of day-to-day life had begun to warn him. If he could become an officer, Coriolanus would be given more challenging tasks. The day brought 2 alterations to the schedule. The first, that they would begin serving on guard duty, caused little excitement, as the job was widely known for its tedium. Still, Coriolanus reasoned he'd rather be manning the desk at the front of the barracks than scrubbing Pam's. Perhaps he could sneak in a bit of reading or writing. The second change unnerved him. When they reported for marksmanship, they were informed that Coriolanus' suggestion to shoot birds around the gallows had been approved. Beforehand, however, the Citadel wanted them to trap 100 or so jabberjays and mockingjays and return them to the lab, unharmed for study. His squad had been tapped for the help because cages in the trees that afternoon, which meant he'd be working with scientists from Dr. Gall's lab. A team had arrived by hovercraft that morning. He'd only ever seen a handful of people at the Citadel, but the idea of encountering anyone from the lab, where no doubt everyone knew the details of his trickery with the snakes and subsequent disgrace, set him on edge. And then a terrible thought hit him. Surely Dr. Gall wouldn't oversee the bird roundup herself. Sending a letter across the expanse of Panem had seemed almost like a lark, but it made him tremble to think of meeting her face-to-face for the first time since his banishment. As Coriolanus bounced along in the back of the truck unarmed, perhaps soon to be unmasked, his optimism for the weekend vanished. The other recruits, happy to be on what they seemed to be a field trip, chatted around him as he sank into silence. Janus, however, understood his trepidation. Dr. Gall won't be here, he whispered. This is strictly lackey work if we're involved. Coriolanus nodded, but was not convinced. When the truck pulled up on the hanging tree, he hid in the back of the squad while he surveyed the 4 capital scientists, all of whom were ridiculously dressed in their lab coats, as if they might be able to discover the immortality instead of trapping a bunch of insipid birds in 100 degrees. He examined each face, but none looked even remotely familiar, and he relaxed a bit. The cavernous lab had contained hundreds of scientists, and these were bird, not reptile specialists. They greeted the soldiers good-naturedly, directing everyone to grab one of the wire mesh traps, which looked like cages, while they explained the setup. The recruits obliged, collecting their traps, and took seats at the edge of the woods near the gallows. Janus gave him a thumbs up at Dr. Gall's absence. He was about to return it when he noticed a figure in the clearing deep in the woods. A woman in a lab coat stood motionless, her back to them, her head tipped sideways as she listened to the cacophony of birdsong. The other scientists waited respectfully until she finished, and she made her way back to the trees. As she pushed the branch aside, Coriolanus got a clear look at her face, which might have been forgettable had it not been for the large pink glasses perched on her nose. He recognized her at once. She was the one who chewed him out for upsetting her birds when he'd been flailing around, trying to escape the lab after watching Clementia collapse in a rainbow of pus. The question is, would she remember him? He slapped down even farther behind Smiley's back and developed a fascination with his bird trap. The rosily bespectacled woman, which one of the scientists affectionately introduced as Dr. K, greeted them in a friendly manner, explaining their mission to collect 50 each of the jabberjays and mockingjays and laying out the plan for achieving it. They were to help seed the forest with traps, which would be baited with food, water, decoy birds, and draw in the prey. The traps would be open for 2 days so that the birds could freely come and go. On Wednesday, they would return, refresh the bait, and set the traps to capture the birds. Eager to please, the recruits divided into 5 groups, 4 each of which had followed one of the scientists into a different part of the woods. Coriolanus swerved into a clump with the man who introduced Dr. K and concealed himself in foliage as soon as possible. In addition to the traps, they carried backpacks containing various types of bait. They hiked 100 yards until they reached a red mark on one of the trunks, indicating their ground zero. Under the scientist's direction, they spread out concentrically from the spot, working in teams of 2 to bait the traps and position them high in the trees. Coriolanus found himself paired with Bug, who turned out to be a first-class climber, having been raised in District 11, where the children helped attend the orchards. They spent a sweaty but productive couple of hours working, with Coriolanus baiting and Bug holding traps up in the branches. When they reconvened, Coriolanus ducked out and sat on the truck bed, examining his multiple bug bites until they put distance between him and Dr. K. She had paid no special attention at all. Don't be paranoid, he thought. She doesn't remember you. Tuesday was back to business as usual, though Coriolanus reviewed for the test over meals and the brief time before lights out. He was itching to get back to Lucy Gray, and she kept drifting into his thoughts, but he did his best to push her out, promising himself he could revel in daydreams when the test was over. On Wednesday, he muscled his way through the morning workout, sat alone during lunch with a manual for a final cram, and then went over to the classroom in which they did their tactical lessons. 2 other peacekeepers had signed up, one in his late 20s, claimed to have taken the test 5 times already, and another who must have been pushing 50, which seemed like an ancient for a life change. Test-taking ranked among Coriolanus' greatest talents, and he felt the familiar rush of excitement as he opened the cover of his booklet. He loved the challenge. His obsessive nature meant almost instant absorption into the mental obstacle course. 3 hours later, sweat-soaked, exhausted, and happy, he handed in his booklet and went to the mess hall for ice. He sat in the strip of shade his barrack provided, rubbing the cubes over his body and reviewing the questions in his head. The ache of losing his university career returned briefly, but he pushed it away, his thoughts of becoming a legendary military leader like his father. Maybe this had been his destiny all along. The rest of his squad was still out with the Citadel scientists climbing trees and activating traps, so he wandered over to collect the mail for his room. 2 giant boxes from Mob Plinth greeted him, promising another wild night at the Hob. He carried them back, but decided to wait open until the others returned. Ma had also sent him a separate letter thanking him for all he had done for Sejanus and asking him to continue to keep an eye on her boy. Coriolanus put down the letter and sighed at the thought of being Sejanus' keeper. Escaping the capital may have temporarily relieved his torment, but he had already worked himself into a state about rebels, conspiring with Billy Top, agonizing over the girl in the guardhouse. How long would it be before he pulled another stomach sneaking into the arena? Then, once again, people would look to Coriolanus to get him out of the mess. The thing was, he didn't believe Sejanus would ever change. Perhaps he was incapable of it, but more to the point, he didn't want to. Already he rejected what the peacekeeping life offered, pretending he couldn't shoot, refusing to take officer candidate tests, making it clear he had no desire to excel on behalf of the capital. District 2 would always be home. District people would always be family. District rebels would always have just a cause on their side, and it would be Sejanus' moral duty to help them. Coriolanus felt a new sense of threat rising up inside him. He tried to shrug off Sejanus' misguided behavior into the capital, but here it was different. Here he was viewed as an adult, and the consequences of his actions could be life or death. If he helped the rebels, he could himself. He could find himself in front of a firing squad. What was going on in Sejanus' head anyway? On impulse, Coriolanus opened Sejanus' locker, removed his box, and slid the contents on the floor carefully. They included a stack of mementos, a pack of gum, and 3 medicine bottles prescribed by a capital doctor. 2 appeared to be sleeping capsules, the third, a bottle of morphine with a drop of dope into the lid, much like the one he'd seen in Dean Highborn use on occasion. He knew Sejanus had been medicated during his breakdown. Ma had told him this much, but why had he brought these here? Had Ma slipped them in as a precaution? He flipped through the rest of the contents, a scrap of fabric, stationery pens, a small chunk of marble crudely carved into something that might be a heart and a pile of photos. The Plinths had annual portraits taken, unique maps of Sejanus' growth from infants the past 2 years. All the pictures were a family except an old photo of a group of skilled children. Coriolanus took him to be one of their class, but no one looked familiar, and a lot of the kids were dressed in rather ill-fitting, shabby clothing. He spotted Sejanus in a neat suit, smiling pensively from the second row. Behind him towered a boy who took him much older. On closer inspection, the pieces fell together. It was Marcus, in a school photo from Sejanus' last year in District 2. There was no record of his capital classmates at all, not even Coriolanus. For some reason, this seemed to be the greatest confirmation of where Sejanus' loyalties lay. At the bottom of the pile, he found a thick silver frame holding, of all things, Sejanus' diploma. It had been removed from its final letter and transferred to a frame, as if for display, but why? Sejanus would not in a million years hang it on the wall, even if it had a wall to hang on. Coriolanus fingered the frame, tracing the tarnished metal, and flipped it over. The back panel seemed slightly askew, and a tiny corner of the pale green paper peeked from the inside. That's not just paper, he thought, grimly, and he slid the fasteners to the free of the panel. As it popped off, a stack of freshly minted bills spilled to the floor. Money, and quite a lot of it. Why would Sejanus have brought so much cash to his new life as peacekeeper? Would Ma have insisted? No, not Ma. She seemed to feel money was at the root of the problem. Strabo, then? Thinking whatever his son encountered, the money would shield him from harm. Possibly, but Strabo usually handled the payoffs himself. Was it something Sejanus had done on his own without his parents' knowledge? That was more worrisome to think of. Was this a lifetime of allowances carefully squirreled away for a rainy day, withdrawn from the bank the day before his departure and hidden in his picture frame? Sejanus always complained about his father's habit of buying his way out of trouble, but it had been ingrained from birth. The blunt method of solving problems, passed down from father to son, distasteful but efficient. Coriolanus scooped up the cash, tapped it into a neat stack, and flipped through the bills. There was hundreds, thousands of dollars here, but what would he use in District 12, where there was nothing to buy, nothing anyway that a peacekeeper's salary would cover? Most of the recruits were sending half their paychecks home. As the capital provided almost everything they needed, short of stationery and night at the Hob. He supposed the Hob had black market, but he hadn't seen much attempt at peacekeeper once the booze had been bought in. They didn't need dead rabbits or shoelaces or homemade soap, and even if they did, they couldn't easily afford it. Of course, there were other things you could buy, like information, access, and silence. There were bribes, there was power. Coriolanus heard the voices of his returning squad. He swiftly concealed the cash in the silver frame, being careful to leave one tiny corner invisible. He repacked the box and stored it in Sejanus's locker. By the time his bunkmates rolled in, he was standing over Miles' boxes with his arms spread wide, wearing a big grin, asking, "Oh, who's free on Saturday?" The smiley beanpole and bug tore open the boxes and unpacked the treasure with his end. Sejanus sat on the bed and watched with amusement. Coriolanus leaned on the bank above him. "Thank goodness for your ma. Otherwise, we'd all be flat broke." "Yeah, not a penny between us," Sejanus agreed. The one thing Coriolanus had never questioned was Sejanus' honesty. If anything, he'd have welcomed a little less of it, but this was a bald-faced lie, delivered as naturally as the truth, which meant now anything he said was suspect.